Welcome to my review of The Blood of Zeus, the latest Netflix original anime series streaming right now, created by Charley and Vlas. Parlapanides, I hope that's how we pronounce it. Look, it's based on Greek mythology, so you know I must talk about it. We follow a commoner, Heron, living in ancient Greece, who discovers his true heritage as, of course, the son of Zeus, and he also discovers his true purpose, and that is to save the world from an evil, demonic army. And I was excited for this show ever since it was announced like 2 or 3 years ago. It was called Gods and Heroes back then. The main character was supposed to be someone named Kofi, who is actually a part of the show, just not the main character. And I do think Gods and Heroes is a much better title. But I was excited for this show because it had the look and kind of the vein of Castlevania, which Netflix is doing so well. But it was based on Greek mythology, which is like one of my longest passions. And I was not disappointed by this show. Of course, with every Greek mythology story, you gotta have some beats here and there that you are very familiar with and that you are expecting when you go into something based on Greek mythology. God of War has told us that. The countless adaptations of The Legend of Hercules told us that. Clash of the Titans, and also Immortal, starring Henry Cavill, which is a very underrated movie. So look, you're going into this, you're going to see some very familiar plot beats and character relations that you have seen before when it comes to this kind of fantasy subgenre of Greek mythology. Nevertheless, they do make it work, and they do make it kind of stand out enough for you to not confuse it with other things. Because look, this is rated R. This is not Disney's Hercules. This is not God of War either, but it has kind of very good familiar beats from that story as well. The thing that surprised me the most about this show was that it actually has some interesting lessons for the characters and some interesting themes to be discussed with the journey that each character goes along in. It has an interesting hero, though he doesn't start out that way. He becomes a very interesting and compelling character, easy to root for. The villain as well, he has this awesome look to him. He's vicious, he has no mercy on anyone, and he becomes more and more interesting as the show goes along. The gods as well are put on the front lines too. They're not just sidelined and scheming about what the humans will do. They are actually a very big and interesting part of this show. What you are expecting the gods to do, they're not necessarily put in the same archetypal roles that we usually see in Greek mythology stories. A lot of things are familiar, of course, but in general, it feels like they shifted gods here and there to have more interesting, more prominent roles and different intricate relations with each character justifying their actions. Because besides our main hero Heron and our main villain Seraphim, we also have Zeus and Hera, and how their dynamic affects the events of the show, and the fact that they're put so much on the front line, and the fact that they're such integral parts of this story, and how we delve into Greek lore and mythology and how that comes into play. It's also very interesting. We get into a lot of Greek mythology lore and how certain things are connected and how they work and how they make it work within the mechanics of this specific story. Was really great to see. We get to learn a little bit more about the Titans and about the relations with the gods, and now these other beings were created because of the mix of the blood of Zeus and of the Titans, and they are the giants, and they have such cool, interesting designs to them and such interesting powers. What they lack in personality, they make up for in great action, and this show has a lot of that in spades. The action here is very, very good. It's very gory, it's very rated R, but it also doesn't pull any punches, figuratively or literally. And a lot of what makes the action look great as well is the animation. This animation is great. It is very much the style of Castlevania, to the point where initially I thought these were the same creators and the same team behind Castlevania. That does not seem to be the case, but they do look very different, even though the style of design of the characters and the world does look the same. You can see they have the same building blocks. Apart from that, they really stand out on its own, and they make up for in great animation, in great emotional scenes, in great action, in great drama. And the show does a lot of interesting things with its characters, especially in the second half, which is my favorite in the show, and I'll get to why just in a little bit, because this show is 8 episodes. Episodes 5 through 8 are my favorites. The last episode alone is fantastic because they go up to like 40 minutes in length, and it's just an all-out action movie, an action episode of this entire show, and it's really, really great. And certain decisions they made with certain characters throughout the story to bring everything into fruition really caught me by surprise. I was not expecting at all them to have certain things happened, especially in the latter episodes that I've briefly mentioned, and I really enjoy that they had the balls and the imagination and creativity to end up in such vastly different directions than other Greek mythology stories. And ultimately, one of the things that make the characters and the stories and arcs they go in feel so different and feel so worth of investment is because the gods are in the front line, and everything they do, whether it's good or bad, because you constantly doubt just mostly everyone in the show, is that it ultimately feels like the humans are being mere pawns to the gods throughout the show. There's a war on Earth, there's a war on Olympus, and how they converge is really interesting to see. So overall, I was pleasantly surprised to see such a great story about Greek mythology and these legendary heroes and legendary villains. We have acknowledgement that Perseus and Hercules exist. Supposedly there are 7 bastard sons of Zeus, including Heron. So apart from Theseus, I'm missing like 3 more, so let me know in the comments below if you remember the other ones. But as far as issues are concerned, and this show does have a few, that first half, and even the second half up until the last episode, which I love, and I find the second half as a whole really interesting, the show can feel very slow in its first 4 episodes because you are so familiar with these beats that we kind of always see in Greek mythology stories. You can kind of, okay, I see this coming, and even though they're showcased as big reveals in the context of the show, you're like, okay, I saw this coming a mile ahead. Why are we not moving forward? So the show feels like it's finding its story and its characters as it goes along. As far as our villain and our hero are concerned, I find their relationship really interesting. I find them individually really interesting. They do have an interesting dynamic and an interesting relationship. However, that does not come into fruition until the latter half of the show, because even though the audience is aware of that at like the 3rd episode or something, they themselves are not. And so you can't really play with that in the context of the story with our characters, the emotions they feel, how conflicted they are about this or that, without them having knowledge of it. And when it comes to revealing that to the characters, it's kind of underwhelming. It's just, hey, here it is. Here's what is happening. I also briefly mentioned, but these giants, again, they are so cool in design and in power and the lore behind them. But as far as personality is concerned, they're literally just big, big monsters that want to destroy the gods because they're evil. That's really it. And overall, what I mentioned about the first half being slow, and even up until that last episode, it can feel like the show is kind of doing what Castlevania did in its first season, where it was just 4 episodes. This season is 8 episodes. At the end of the day, it does feel right, but as you're watching, it can feel a little bit like, oh, this feels more like a prologue where the story and the characters are kind of being fleshed out and found out, and we're just building building this for the second season to be the actual story. Again, by the end of episode 8, I mostly didn't feel that, but it was a struggle kind of thinking, okay, why are we not moving like real fast right now? Because these episodes are not really small, all of them. There were ways to move the story along further and faster. The characters as well, even though I really like their arcs, even though I really like the directions they do go in, it feels like these characters are just waiting for, okay, I should move right now because it's like episode 4, we gotta do this in the next 4 episodes until the season's over. Pacing wise in general, it's very uneven, even though it does feel like the last episode pays it off. It's just very odd as you watch it for a first time watch. But honestly, the way they leave this season, I cannot wait to see what happens in season 2. And God, I hope there's a season 2. And God, I hope we don't have to wait too long for it. The way we leave off the season, it shows very interesting directions the show could possibly go on, and something completely different from the first season. Though it takes a while, Blood of Zeus really pays off by the end, offering complex characters, interesting themes, and a very, very worth investing story. I cannot wait to see more of this lore and these characters and what directions they go in. I'm giving Blood of Zeus a B+. Now, what did you think of Blood of Zeus, my beautiful geekies? Let me know in the comments below your favorite tale from Greek mythology, and what directions would you like to see the show go in on a second season. Thank you so much for watching. You are the best. Check out my debut episode for my new podcast, Origin Story, with guest Zach Pope, and stay tuned for many more reviews to come in the near and far future. And so until the next video, don't forget to stay beautiful, stay geeky, and please do like, do share, do subscribe, because it really helps me out and the channel as well. But most importantly, above everything else, forever and always, love each other and love the movies.